Right now, we are at a situation where American crocodiles were endangered as recently as 15 or 16 years ago in 2007. They are now, guys, endangered.
Deep in the Florida Everglades, the kings of the swamp are vanishing without a trace. For decades, the American alligator and crocodile ruled these waters with iron jaws. But now, there's a new predator in town, and it doesn't play by the rules. Scientists are sounding the alarm on a chilling discovery that's forcing officials to consider a terrifying new label for the Sunshine State: designated man-eater zones. This isn't a movie plot, it's a biological invasion that's turning the river of grass into a battlefield. To understand why this discovery sent a shockwave through the world of biology, you first have to understand the original rulers of this wild frontier. The Florida Everglades, or the River of Grass as it is popularly known, is a place filled with slow-moving water and grass. As beautiful as this place might seem, there's always a hidden battle of survival, as it is home to one of the world's most exotic creatures. And in this vast river of sawgrass, the rules are simple. Only the strongest and smartest get to rule. For a very long time, that meant two legendary reptiles sat at the top of this food chain. One of the very rulers and brute force enforcers of this swamp is the American alligator. It is a powerful and adaptable tank of a creature, and a generalist that can thrive almost anywhere as far as freshwater is concerned. Then there is its more evasive cousin, the American crocodile. Even though they might seem not so different from each other, they both have very distinct personalities. While the alligators are known to be the ones in charge, commanding respect openly, the American crocodile is mostly shy and is very difficult to spot. If you're lucky enough to spot one in the wild, it just might instinctively try to swim away from you. These creatures usually want nothing to do with people. In fact, the safety record is all you need to know about them. Contrary to what you might think of them, there has never been any confirmed fatal attack by an American crocodile in the wild in United States history. For generations, these two species managed to share the landscape peacefully. The alligators kept to the freshwater, and the crocodiles stayed in the saltwater. They respected the boundaries and shared the territory without total warfare. It was a balance that nature spent millions of years perfecting. We knew their habits and we knew their temperaments. The system worked because every animal stayed in its lane. But in 2009, rangers began noticing that the rules were being broken, and the kings of the swamp were suddenly looking over their shoulders. The inciting incidents, the first signs, were easy to miss. Veteran airboat captains, people who knew every gator and croc in their territory, started reporting strange things. They noticed that the strongest American crocodiles, which were the ones that held the best nesting spots for a decade, were gone. You would think they probably relocated or found new territories, but the basking spots that these particular crocodiles lived in and fought for were now abandoned. Something was causing these animals to leave their territories, and it was something big. If an apex predator is running, what is it running from? It wasn't until a terrifying discovery in the swamp alerted the attention of biologists. There were rumored strange sightings in the swamps, but also in canals and other places where they had no business being. These were remains of crocodiles and alligators, and not just any kind, remains of the rulers of the Florida Everglades. It was as if something was clearing the area with extreme, unnecessary violence. How these rulers of the swamp were able to vanish without a struggle was another question that no one had any answers to. The most unnerving change, however, was the silence that filled the swamp, proving without a doubt that the breeding grounds had now become a hunting field. For a while, the American crocodile has been a protected species. After years of conservative efforts, these species have had successful breeding, filling the remote estuaries with new generations. Now, those nurseries were empty. Areas that should have been teeming with year-old juveniles were barren, and an entire local food chain was disrupted because the natural rulers of the environment had suddenly adopted flight behavior. This usually happens when an animal on the top of the food chain, like the American crocodile, decides to run away, altering the natural order. When something like this happens, there's no doubt that the potential threat is absolutely undeniable. Adding to the confusion were increasingly aggressive encounters with people. We already established that the Native American crocodile is a shy creature, yet fishermen reported crocs were suddenly snapping at fishermen or chasing small boats. To biologists, these reports and evidence did not add up, and they knew a dangerous and external force was at play. Something was bullying the apex predators out of their own home. Locals had a theory, and it involved Florida's most famous invader, but they were looking in the wrong direction. When the reports of missing and injured crocodiles started piling up, everyone suspected the Burmese python of being the culprit behind it. These massive invasive snakes were already the undisputed boogeyman of the Everglades. Naturally, pythons are known for wiping out local mammal populations, eating everything from raccoons to deer. So it made perfect sense to assume these gigantic constrictors had finally grown big and ambitious enough to start targeting the crocodile population, especially the kings of this particular swamp. We know pythons are willing to go after big game, and it brings us back to 2005 when a massive python tried to swallow a 6-foot alligator whole. The snake literally burst open trying to consume its rival. And this incident made headlines as the python population expanded and spread deeper into the mangrove forests, which is coincidentally the exact territory of the American crocodile. Most people assumed this was simply the next stage of the turf war. Finally, they thought, the snakes had finally won. However, the forensic evidence refused to corroborate with this theory. Biologists, after thorough examination, quickly realized what they had seen wasn't the work of a python. Pythons kill by suffocating their prey as they wrap around them, squeezing the life out of them, and usually they are stealthy ambush hunters. These missing crocodiles showed no signs of being crushed. It was clear that something else caused the deaths of these reptiles. Now that the first suspect was out of the picture, the uncertainty was troubling, and the fact that this killer could wipe out the kings of the swamps wasn't a good sign.
This new threat wasn't afraid to leave a trail in its path, proving it was an apex killer. If it wasn't the snakes squeezing the life out of the Everglades, what was it? The answer surfaced near Miami, hiding in plain sight, wearing a disguise that fooled almost everyone. The investigation. The turning point came when the University of Florida's herpetology team captured a young crocodile they found near a densely populated urban area, which was miles from any established American crocodile territory. The location alone was a major red flag. When the team got a good look at the animal, they felt an immediate sense of worry. The look of this young animal was a perfect example of what is called the uncanny valley effect. Even though it looked almost right, something about it was just off. The snout was unusually broader and more robust than normal, and it had a darker color that looked olive-black instead of the familiar grayish-green of the native species. But that wasn't all. What was more concerning was its personality. For a young animal, it was wildly aggressive and displayed a predatory boldness never seen even in fully grown native crocodiles. The team of scientists were baffled and wondered if they had gotten their hands on some kind of mutant species or a hybrid crocodile that had crossbred with an alligator. They had no clear answers, and the only way to know for sure was to send tissue samples to a lab, beginning an anxious wait for DNA results that would take months. During this tense period, more reports of these strange crocodiles came in, even before the DNA results came back. Researchers observed something terrifying about these species. These mystery crocodiles were growing an estimated 28% faster and were far more aggressive and bigger than native crocodiles of the same age. Whatever this creature was, it was not only surviving in Florida's environment, but it was also thriving better than the native kings. The long-awaited results finally came, and what they saw would prove a situation far worse than they expected. The DNA did not match the Native American crocodile. It was not a mutant, and it was not an alligator hybrid. Instead, it was a perfect match for Crocodilus niloticus. The strange, aggressive crocodile they had found in a Miami canal was without a doubt a Nile crocodile. The realization that the gentle, reclusive reptile was being replaced by a monster from across the ocean wasn't what they had guessed. And worst of all, the difference between the two species was enormous. The Native American crocodile, as we know, has 0 recorded human fatalities in the United States, but the Nile crocodile is the exact opposite. The Nile croc holds a notorious reputation as an indiscriminate man-eater. Across its native Africa, it is responsible for an estimated 50 to 200 human deaths every year. This is a predator whose biology focuses on large mammals and whose aggression is legendary. Its physical prowess backs up its terrifying reputation, as these crocodiles can grow up to 18 feet in length and can weigh over a ton, and their bite force is among the strongest in the entire animal kingdom. The Native American crocodiles were not dying from a natural event. They were being outcompeted, displaced, and perhaps even preyed upon by a cousin that was stronger, faster, and exponentially more aggressive. This apex predator and notorious man-eater from 6,000 miles away had suddenly established itself, hiding in plain sight, and was now taking over the throne of the Florida swamps. The identity was confirmed, and the monster is real. But the question on everyone's mind is, how did an animal from Africa, an apex predator of this magnitude, suddenly appear and begin breeding in the heart of the Florida Everglades? One thing for sure is that these crocodiles didn't just swim 6,000 miles across the Atlantic. The only logical explanation points to human activities, and in South Florida, that means only one thing: the exotic pet trade. Florida has a massive, often unregulated black market for exotic animals. While Nile crocodiles are strictly legal to possess without special high-security permits, reckless collectors treat these deadly predators as pets. When their tiny, cute pet becomes a colossal, unmanageable man-eater, they simply discard it without proper supervision. After a series of tests, the captured Nile crocodiles were found to be genetically identical. This was proof that they weren't random. In fact, they all likely originated from a small group of hatchlings that either escaped from a poorly secured private facility or, more probably, were intentionally released by an owner who could no longer handle them. The sheer recklessness of that one criminal act is staggering. One person's carelessness created the ultimate ecological threat. A single reptile released years ago had successfully established a breeding population, meaning these Nile crocodiles were not new to the Everglades swamp. They had been living in the swamps for a long time, hiding in plain sight, successfully camouflaging among the Native American crocodiles due to their similar yet subtly different appearance. The fear wasn't that they showed up, it was where they could go next. The Everglades offer everything they need to multiply, and these crocodiles can handle cold weather with ease. This means the threat was growing and it was moving north. The aftermath. This revelation triggered an immediate panic among wildlife officials, which led to the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission and the University of Florida launching a mission to capture the invaders. It was a difficult task to find the original source of the invasion before the breeding problem could get out of hand. The mission started off well, with them being able to capture 3 Nile crocodiles. The thought of there being more of these species in the Everglades swamp was very concerning. The entire future of Florida's ecosystem was dependent on whether or not they would be able to capture all of these invasive crocodiles. Even if there is one Nile crocodile looming in these swampy waters, dealing with the outcome could be catastrophic. The stakes were high, and knowing how strong and fast-growing these Nile crocodiles are, it was easy for them to easily outcompete the already endangered Native American crocodiles for food and habitat, which would eventually lead to their decline. Even worse, the cold tolerance factor means the Nile crocodiles can potentially expand their range far north, well out of the southernmost tip of Florida. Now this is where officials began to get worried. With these factors on the table, the scale of the invasion was unknown, and the potential for catastrophic human and wildlife conflict was imminent in public areas. The threat and the identity were certain, but what was more terrifying was the greater unknown.
But as the investigation dug deeper into the origin of this invasion, the true horrifying motive for the crocodile's loss became chillingly clear. It wasn't the Nile crocodile that was the monster,
but the who and what that brought it here. The real invasive species. Taking a step back and looking at the full timeline of this investigation, the Nile crocodile is really just a weapon wielded by humans. Tracing back to the history books, almost every biological disaster in Florida has human fingerprints all over the crime scene. A lot of invasive species infestations, like the Burmese python, green iguana, and now one of Africa's deadliest killers, are caused by humans because someone, somewhere, thought they could own an exotic creature. This brings us to a harsh reality about the state of Florida, which has now become a revolving door for invasive species due to carelessness, greed, and negligence. The black market for exotic animals is a massive industry that operates in the shadows, and the Everglades has become its dumping ground. But the cruelty goes much deeper than just releasing a few dangerous animals. The Native American crocodile was already fighting a losing war long before its African cousins showed up. For decades, their homes have been at risk of destruction. Just to suit man's needs and desires, coastal mangroves, which are natural homes of these animals, are now replaced with high-rise condos and luxury hotels. Not only that, but the natural water flow of the Everglades has also been redirected to suit agricultural demands, poisoning the remaining water with runoff from sugar farms and city streets. The forest and swamp rulers have now been pushed into smaller and smaller corners of the swamp, leaving them stressed and vulnerable. To make everything worse, we let the Nile crocodile give the final blow. The tragic irony in all of this is the fact that efforts have been implemented to conserve these species only to weaken them through habitat destruction, effectively breaking their defenses. Then, the reckless desire for exotic pets dropped a super predator right into the cage with them, knowing these native species could never stand a chance. Ultimately, realizing humans are responsible for being disruptors of the Everglades is definitely a hard pill to swallow. By creating the perfect conditions for a monster to thrive, we open the door to an invasion. The Everglades is a ticking clock, suffering not just from one problem, but 1,000 caused by the human race. If these Nile crocodiles manage to find each other and establish a self-sustaining population, the rule book for Florida wildlife changes forever. We are looking at a future where the state has to rewrite its safety protocols entirely to deal with a threat that looks at us as food. Right now, if you walk a trail in the Everglades, you see signs warning you about alligators. Those signs are mostly there to tell you not to be foolish and feed them. In this new reality, those signs get replaced with something much darker. They would have to warn families about active man-eaters, and it would change the perception of the entire park. The Everglades stops being a beautiful wilderness and becomes a designated danger zone where you enter at your own risk. That change is terrifying because it fundamentally alters the human relationship with the wild, and that fear carries a heavy price tag. It is no surprise that Florida depends on ecotourism, and people come from all over the world to kayak the mangroves and fish in the backcountry. If the headlines start reporting attacks by predators that actively hunt humans, this could greatly affect tourism as we know it. Plus, the state would have to spend millions of dollars every year just to track and hunt these beasts. All of this leads us to the ugliest part of the solution. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission cannot simply catch these massive animals and mail them back to the Nile River. To protect human life, they have to launch a permanent eradication program, which means hunting and killing these animals on a large scale. It is a harsh and bloody business. We would effectively be declaring war on an apex predator because we were too careless to keep it out of our backyard in the first place. We spent years thinking the swamps were emptying out because of pythons. We hoped that it was a snake that was the villain of this story, but we were wrong. The monster we so much feared has somehow become us. The Nile crocodile is officially the new face of fear in Florida, and it's a problem we created. Now the clock is ticking for the Everglades, but we want to hear from you. If another Nile croc is spotted in the wild, should the state launch a full-scale hunt to protect our native species, or is there a more humane way to fix our mistake? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this deep dive into Florida's secret invasion chilling, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you never miss a breakdown of the world's most dangerous wildlife mysteries. Thanks for watching, and stay safe out there.